We are delighted to be here with you all and honored to be opening this year's APCE conference. With this year's focus on boundless hospitality, we wanted to be able to begin this entire conference by rooting this beautiful theological concept in the lived reality of those whose very lives depend on the hospitality of others. And in order to do this, we will be facilitating a different kind of plenary this morning that is designed to be an interactive experience that imagines what it would be like to leave home behind and embark on a perilous journey towards an often unwelcoming land. And to do this, we will walk together in the footsteps of those who migrate from Central America to our borders. As followers of Christ who taught his disciples that to welcome the stranger is to welcome him, our response to the crisis of global human migration is the question of our time. Right now, 65 million people are on the move across our globe, fleeing poverty and war, environmental disaster, and they are showing up at our doorstep. And the question is, will our hospitality be deep and wide, or will it be so narrow that only a few can squeeze their way in?
As we journey in the steps of migrants, we will be lifting up their stories and their voices. Many of the topics we will discuss today and the realities that we will share will be very hard to hear. They are unimaginably harder to have experienced. But their pain is something many of us need to hear. We need to let their words and their experiences break our hearts open. But for others here this morning, we understand that their pain and their suffering is all too familiar. And we recognize that there are maybe things that you hear today that will be a trigger for you. And so we have created a safe space so that anyone who needs to can step out. We encourage you to take care of yourself in the midst of this journey. A variety of chaplains are available at the back of the room who will be able to offer you pastoral care and conversation. You will recognize them as they will be wearing house stickers. And now, let us begin our time in prayer.
Let us read together responsively. We come together as creatures on the move.
The journey is our story.
Some of us have been pulled across borders by dreams and visions.
Some of us have been pushed across borders by violence and disruption.
We come together remembering that we were once strangers, and as we sojourn, find that we are strangers still.
The way is our story.
Some of us have been pulled into our identities by hope and imagination.
Some of us have been pushed into our identities by fear and hostility.
We come together as those upon whom God has set her heart in love. Some of us have found home in the generous hospitality of those we meet along the way.
Some of us have found home in the solidarity of those who journey with us.
We come together to remember that our lives and loves are bound up together.
The liberation is in our story.
We praise the God who crossed the borders of time and space to become flesh and bone, grafting his identity into ours.
We give thanks.
Amen.
As we begin our journey together this morning, we invite you to introduce yourselves to the people who, to the right and the left of you in the arc of your table. These 2 or 3 people will be your traveling companions. We invite you to introduce yourselves, sharing your name, and tell them where home is for you. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, we invite you to focus your attention back up to the front. Thank you. You can tell you're all educators because you know how important it is to like focus back when the person in front says focus back. Thank you. And so as we set out on our journey together this morning, we want to first root ourselves in the idea of home. So we're going to invite you to get comfortable in your seat. Close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths in and out. And begin to picture your home. You are welcome to define home as you wish. It may not be the place you're currently living. Just picture the place that comes to mind when we say home. What does it look like? When you walk through that door, what does it smell like? What are the sounds that you hear? And what does it feel like? Just take a few moments breathing in and out, rooting yourself in all of that, the smells and sounds and feelings of home. And now that you're home, think about why it's important to you and what makes a home feel like a home. Think about whether there's ever been a time in your life when home stopped feeling like home. Think about whether you or someone you've known has experienced an event that made home stop feeling like home. Take a few more breaths in this place. Maybe going to your favorite space in your home and sitting there for a moment. Now get up, and we want you to leave this space behind. We want you to imagine leaving home behind you. Experience what it feels like to close that door. What it means to walk away from that home. Imagine that you will never return to this place again.
No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well. Your neighbors running faster than you, breathe bloody in their throat. You have to understand that no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one burns their palms under trains beneath carriages. No one spends days and nights in the stomach of a truck feeding on newspaper unless the miles traveled means something more than just a journey.
No one wants to be beaten, pitied. No one chooses refugee camps or strip searches where your body is left aching, or prison because prison is safer than a city of fire and one prison guard in the night is better than a truckload of men who look like your father.
No one's skin will be tough. The go-home blacks, refugees, dirty immigrants, asylum seekers, sucking a country dry.
They smell strange, savage, messed up their country, and now they want to mess ours up. How do the words, the dirty looks, roll off your backs? Maybe because the blow is softer than a limb torn off, or the words are more tender than 14 men between your legs, or the insults are easier to swallow than rubble, than bone, than your child's body in pieces. I want to go home, but home is the mouth of a shark.
No one leaves home until home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave. Run away from me now, go. I don't know what I've become, but I know anywhere is safer than here.
With the powerful words of Somalian refugee Warsan Shire echoing in our hearts, and with thanks to our readers Margaret Mwale and Samuel Son of the Presbyterian Church USA, we are ready to go. We are leaving home, possibly never to return. There is a card at your seat at the table. This is your identity for this portion of the plenary. So we invite you to take a moment to read your card and begin to put your feet in their shoes.
And if you're following on live stream, go to the webpage on the banner and you can find the same resources there and choose an identity. While you have different identities, you all originate from the same region of the world, the Northern Triangle of Central America. Each of you has a history that compels you to leave your home, a home you love. Some of you taking your family with you, some of you traveling alone. But each of you is leaving a country, Guatemala, Honduras, or El Salvador. All three countries suffer from a high rate of poverty and disenfranchisement of a large portion of their citizenry. The effect is an overall destabilization of the countries and governments which cannot protect you from the resulting violence. In 2012, El Salvador had the highest rate of femicide in the world. Guatemala had the third highest rate, and Honduras the seventh. Honduras was the murder capital of the world in both 2013 and 2014. And in 2016, El Salvador became the murder capital of the world. The aggregated landmass of these three countries combined is about the size of Oregon, yet their population is 7.5 times higher. You love your home. But where do you go within your country if what has happened to you on those cards is what is happening? And your country is roughly 1/3 the size of Oregon. Where do you go to be safe in the home that you love?
There are up to 2,500 miles between your home and the US-Mexico border. It's a long way, but you feel compelled to try. Your whole life, you have heard that there is freedom in the US, that when someone is accused of a crime, they receive due process. When someone is a victim of a crime, their case is heard and investigated. In the US, you can work hard and take that money to make a home and feed your family. You don't have to use it to pay the gangs to leave you alone. You can speak your mind about injustices in the government or the workplace, and your family is not murdered or disappeared in retribution. And so you set your sights and all of your hopes on a place 2,500 miles away.
You experience many dangers on your journey. Some of the dangers are born of the economy of migration. When there is no safe path for people to take who are running from danger, desperation creates exploitation as gangs, corrupt officials, and human traffickers take advantage of the presence of so many who are vulnerable strangers in their land. With no local family ties and no recourse, human beings on the move become an opportunity to gain money and power over regions.
Nos secuestraron a las dos y nos tuvieron varios días así como en un apartamento. Y para mí es bien difícil recordarlo porque nos hacían cosas terribles y de lo cual de eso pues yo quedé embarazada de mi niña. Y al principio no la quería tener, me quería morir, no sé, bien feo. Y ahora la tengo a ella, pero a veces no sé, pero no sé ni de quién es, nada. Pero la amo, ¿verdad? Por ser mi hija. O sea, me pasaron cosas que yo no me esperaba. Y me quedó también una enfermedad que se llama sífilis.
A few days into your journey, you have stopped to rest with your traveling companions in a place where other travelers are also resting. And while gathered there, you strike up a conversation with another migrant, Myrna, from our video, who tells you this story. After she departs from your group, you begin to process what you have heard her share. So we invite you now to turn to one another and discuss these prompts. Begin by sharing with your traveling companions the identity that is on your card. And then think about these questions. Having heard this woman's story, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? Do you continue on your journey knowing the dangers that may lie ahead? And does this story change the way in which you may have been traveling? So you have 7 minutes with your traveling companions to engage in these questions. And you may begin now. We invite you to return your attention to the front of the room. So according to Amnesty International, 6 of every 10 women migrating through Mexico report being a victim of rape or sexual assault. 6 out of every 10. Kidnappings are harder to approximate as many are never found. But the Washington Office on Latin America, who compiles reports taken from migrant shelters, believes that the number of kidnappings to be about 10,000 every 6 months. So check your cards. If you have a K on your card, in the bottom of your card, you, like the woman that we just watched, fell victim to kidnapping. In order to escape, you ran straight to the Mexican authorities, and they turned you into Mexican immigration, and you were deported back to your home country. You did not make it to the U.S. to ask for asylum.
The rest of us will continue on our journey onward the remainder 2,500 miles, but the danger is not over. Without a safe path to ask for protection in the United States or Canada, and with immigration officials in both the U.S. and Mexico searching for you and other migrants like you, you take the path less taken, the more dangerous and complicated route, in hopes that you won't be detected. Some of you ride on top of a train called La Bestia. Some of you go on foot with a coyote to smuggle you. And some of you attempt the journey through the desert on your own.
El primer hijo se fue para Estados Unidos, se fue el 20 de mayo de este año. Emigró porque él dijo, me voy, mamá, porque no hay solución aquí en Guatemala. El cadáver de mi hijo lo encontraron en San Miguel, en un lugar que le dicen San Miguel. Ajá, en Arizona, San Miguel, en un lugar que le dicen San Miguel. Ahí, en Tucson, digamos, ahí. Ajá, o sea, ahorita también el cadáver está huesamenta, porque ya no es cadáver, es una huesamenta. La huesamenta está en Tucson. Por el momento ellos dicen que pudo haber sido por el calor, se le terminó el agua, el líquido, ya no tuvo líquido. Ya no tuvo líquido, dicen ellos. O también podría haber sido que alguna serpiente, dijeron ellos. Nos dijo el consulado de Estados Unidos. Que podía haber sido que eso fue lo que pasó, que haya pasado. Pero más fue que la deshidratación lo hizo perder la vida.
Many refugees lose absolutely everything. Their country, their home, their friends, their family. And so to try to understand the pain that they must feel, we want you to step into your own experience of loss. We've all experienced loss, whether small or large. On your table, on the other side of your identity cards, we invite you to reflect on a few questions. And remember a time that you lost something that you cherished. It could have been a person or a pet or an object or a place that you have lost. So write down that memory of loss and how you felt about it. And what are the many losses that people who migrate and the families they leave behind, think about the losses that they experience. So you have 5 minutes to reflect on this. We invite you to return your attention to the front. So the Attorney General of Mexico does not track the number of migrant deaths in Mexico, but human rights groups believe that over the past 10 years, 70,000 Central Americans have disappeared while traveling through Mexico to the United States. U.S. Custom Border Enforcement of the United States does track migrant deaths, and in 2017 alone, 294 bodies were found by Border Patrol. So check your cards, the lower right corner. If you have a D on your card, you are amongst those who did not make it. You have died on the journey, and you are now in a morgue waiting for someone to identify you and notify your family. There are many, many bodies that remain in the morgue to never be identified. Their families wondering what happened. They are known to those of us in the borderlands as los desconocidos, the unknown. You did not make it to the U.S. to ask immigration officials for asylum.
The rest of us will continue on our journey. We have arrived at the U.S.-Mexico border. The slide you are seeing right now is an actual screenshot from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website explaining refugee and asylum law in the U.S. The top paragraph is the definition of refugee or asylee. It is a person who is persecuted or fears persecution based on their religion, race, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. Look at your cards for a moment. Have you been persecuted? Do you fear persecution? Is it because of your race, religion, nationality, social group, or political opinion? And bear in mind that being a woman, a child, gay, or of a particular social class can place you in a particular social group if that is the reason that you are being persecuted. Now look at the bottom of that screenshot. Under the heading Asylum, in the top bullet point, we find that in order to qualify for asylum, one must first meet the definition of refugee. And the second and third, we learn that you have to be in the U.S. to ask for asylum or at a port of entry. And in the bottom paragraph of the screenshot, we learn that we can ask for asylum regardless of our country of origin. And our current immigration status should not matter. That means that we do not have to have previous permission from the government to enter the U.S. if we are asking for asylum. With this knowledge of our past persecution, knowing that we have to be present in the U.S. to ask, and knowing that it should not matter that we don't have protection, and believing the U.S. to be a nation of laws and compassion, we approach the port of entry and turn ourselves in to immigration officials. So what happens next?
Sí, la verdad sí tenía mucho miedo, mucha ansiedad, porque cuando venía para acá, en el transcurso del viaje me decían de que si pasaba en ciertas partes de México, siempre anduviera con cuidado porque habían mucha delincuencia y podían quitarme a mis hijos o podían violar a mi niña, violarnos a nosotros, o un sinfín de cosas que podía pasar en nuestra vida. Y sí era un poco de miedo porque venía sola con ellos. Bueno, de hecho pensaba que al entregarme a migración pues solo me iban a preguntar la situación que yo estaba viviendo en mi tierra y al platicarles ellos iban a entender la situación que yo estaba viviendo allá y mandarme con mi familia. Y luego nos mandaron en un carro que pensé que iba para allá con mi familia y no fue así. Fue en un lugar que le llaman, que le dicen La Perrera. La verdad es muy horrible. Es muy horrible porque su nombre lo dice, una perrera, donde es un lugar grande con malla alrededor, donde solo tiran una colchoneta y un pedazo de impermeable, como decir el papel aluminio, como el aluminio, tiran un pedazo y con eso tiene uno que acostarse.
Those of you who are still on the journey will now be taken into custody. And in order to not be immediately deported, you need to make a claim for asylum by explaining why you have left your home country and are seeking protection in the United States. So think for a moment about how hard it would be to tell a stranger in a uniform with a gun the very personal story of what you and your family have been through in your home country. Never mind what you've been through on your journey itself, especially when those who wear uniforms in your home country are often corrupt and strike fear in the hearts of many people instead of trust. Consider how difficult it would be to talk about this level of trauma with a stranger. What parts of the story do you tell? What parts are too hard even to put into words? How do you make it compelling? You are fighting for your family's life, for your own life. How do you communicate the level of fear that you have? So after considering this for a moment, you are going to present your story to those in your group who have already been deported or who have died. For those of you whose journey has already ended, you will now play the part of an immigration officer, and they will present their stories to you. So think a little bit about how you would present this story and that your own story, and then you will have an opportunity to present it to the people in your group who are now acting as immigration officers. And this time you will have 7 minutes. really hoping only if. We invite you to return your attention back here. So, 431 Central Americans applied for asylum in Canada in 2016. 260, or 60%, were approved. But asylum approval rates in the United States are less predictable and vary greatly depending on whether you have an attorney or not. 52% of asylum applicants with attorneys gain asylum. Without an attorney, applicants only gain asylum at a rate of 10%. The majority of people don't have attorneys. So check your card. If you have a DD, you went through this process and you were detained and deported. I can tell from the reaction that many of you have DDs. If you have a USA, you were granted asylum in the United States. If you have AC, you did not present yourself at the US border out of fear of deportation, but instead you traveled through the desert on up throughout the United States and presented yourself in Canada, and you were granted asylum in Canada. So I would like to invite those who were granted asylum, whether in the US or Canada, to stand for a moment so we can see you.
AUSA or AC?
Wow. Go ahead and sit back down, thank you. So it's no secret how few people actually make it through our arduous and broken asylum process. And so there are those who feel as if they can't risk it. They cannot risk putting their lives and the lives of their families, their children, into the hands of those who do not rule with compassion or even under the guidance of international refugee laws. And because going home often means death, they feel they have no choice but to find another way to enter into the United States through other paths, and they become part of the undocumented community. And so if you have a question mark on your card, you have now become part of those who live in the shadows. Instead of finding welcome, you find poverty, poor working conditions, and what seems like an entire nation blaming you for all of its problems. Every day is filled with the fear that you might be discovered and deported. But even in the midst of all of that fear, you give thanks that at least here, you are safer than home. Now we're going to invite you to gather around your table one more time and consider what we could have done better for those who were detained and deported, those who died on the journey, and how can we welcome those who now enter into the United States and into Canada, documented and undocumented? How can we show them the radical hospitality that we are called to show in the name of Christ? So you have 8 minutes for this conversation with your traveling companions.
invite you to bring your attention back to the front of the room. It is hard to imagine the devastation of carrying all your hopes on your back for days, weeks, or even months, only to find out that you are now have been detained or deported. For some, returning to their home country is not an option, and so they try and try again.
Yo sé trabajar y eso es lo que yo quiero. Por eso voy, yo no voy porque quiero darme el lujo de comprar casa, carro. No, no, no. Mi vida es mi familia, mi vida son mis nietos. Amo a mis nietos. Hoy no los puedo ver. Nos volvemos a ir porque yo sé que Dios es grande y tiene que haber una tierra donde nos reciban bien.
There has to be a land where we are welcome. As we come to the end of our journey this morning, I hope that these words will continue to travel with us, haunting us, breaking our hearts wide open. There has to be a land where we are welcome. In this time together, we have taken on these different identities and tried to consider what it means to walk in the shoes of our siblings from Central America, to consider the impossible choices that they have had to make, to feel what it must be like to look over your shoulder and see only danger and death and destruction, and to look ahead and see danger and death and destruction, but also a little glimmer of hope, a glimmer that they follow for days and weeks and months as they search for a land where they might find welcome. But this is not the end of our journey. In many ways, Teresa and I hope that it's only the beginning of our journey. As we now step back into our identities as North Americans, a journey now lies in front of us. And we return to the question that we began with. In the face of a global crisis of migration, with 65 million people on the move, will our hospitality be deep and wide, or will it be so narrow that only a few can squeeze their way in? Our identity as a people is shaped by how we choose to respond to this question. And this is the journey that we are on as a people of faith and as a nation. One path has been offered to us by those who sit in the highest offices of our nation. It is a path that is paved with fear and anxiety. It is a path that seeks to build walls and shut doors on those who are suffering. But there's another path, isn't there? A path that is paved with boundless hospitality and love. A path that seeks to be faithful to Christ, who says, when you welcome a stranger in my name, you welcome me. It's a path that understands that, at least according to Matthew 25, our very salvation, brothers and sisters, is wrapped up in how we answer these questions. To be sure, this path is not an easy path. But whoever said that following Christ would be easy? And more than ever, this world is in desperate need of Christians who have decided to actually start acting like Christians. In a nation and in a world that is struggling to decide which path to take, fear of the other or love of the stranger, we have something to offer because we are a people called to proclaim the radical love and welcome of Jesus Christ, even in the midst of a land of fear and anxiety. And we know with all of our hearts that when it comes to fear, the fear that they are trying to market and sell us, when it comes to fear, Scripture tells us only love, perfect love, can cast out all fear. And so in the midst of these anxious and contentious and fearful times, for better or worse, we choose love. we choose welcome, because this is what it means to be disciples of Christ. And so our journey continues.
Each of you, as participants, has access to a bibliography through your APCE app. Many of the video clips that you saw today are a part of a larger film called Genesis of Exodus, which you can come and see with us at noon today in this very space. And you also have a link to that film in this bibliography, so you can take this and share this film in the places where you do ministry. Then again, at 2 p.m., the Office of Immigration Issues is hosting another workshop, and we will explore another resource together, a story map that was created around this journey from Central America, and a Bible study that goes alongside of it. And so we hope that some of you join us for that. But if you can't, again, in your bibliography, you can find this resource so you can take this information home to the people and the places where you do ministry. All of the other things can be accessed on the bibliography as well, because it is our deep hope that you want to do more than learn about this and share what you have learned with others. It is our hope that you have been moved to compassion and action today. And so we want you to think about how you can make your country, your community, and your life more hospitable, more welcoming to newcomers and immigrants. This bibliography is full of resources, and your faith community can answer the call to hospitality with these resources. Some are opportunities to be gracious hosts by pressing on our lawmakers and our policymakers to even allow us to meet a newcomer. This slide shows me a couple of years ago in DC advocating for support of refugees. And I took with me photos like the other one on the right, the We Choose Welcome photo, because I wanted members of Congress to see physical proof of the smiling faces of their constituents who want to continue their ministries of welcome in their communities. And I have two opportunities that you can actually take right now while you are here this week. One is through your APCE app. There's a request, there's an action alert where you can request that the government have a Clean Dream Act, because every day DACA recipients are losing their status and becoming undocumented in the United States. And through that link, you can tell your lawmakers that you want a Clean Dream Act that allows a path to citizenship for 1.8 million children who were brought into this country as young people and who have been here for years and deserve to remain. There's another thing that you can do while you are here as well. We have a Facebook page, Presbyterians for Just Immigration. So open up that Facebook app on your cell phone and find us. It's Presbyterians for Just Immigration. Just a week ago today, one of our church members, Robbie Sanger from Presbyterian Church in Metuchen, New Jersey, was dropping his child off at school, and he was picked up by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is right now being detained, and is at imminent risk of deportation. If you go to that Facebook page and find the January 30th post about Robbie Sanger, you can learn more about his family and his congregation and his situation, and there is an action alert there that you can take as well to advocate for his release and his ability to stay in the United States with his family. And now back to the slides. Some are opportunities to be gracious hosts by reaching out and offering assistance and friendship to someone who's just arrived. This slide, for instance, is a family who arrived in Louisville, a Syrian family, as they were refugees. And the slide to the right of that is Highland Presbyterian Church here in Louisville, Kentucky, creating a space, a safe and happy space of creating an apartment so that that family would have a place to live. These are things that you can do in your community to show radical hospitality and welcome. And then finally, the life of Jesus and his death on the cross taught us that love and ministry can be risky. This last slide conveys just that kind of risky hospitality. The photo on the left is of Allison's church offering sanctuary to Rosa Robles Loreto, a mother who was about to be deported. She is still living in the United States and still able to remain with her family because of Southside Presbyterian Church's radical hospitality. The other photo is of Reverend Heidi Worthen Gamble of Presbytery of the Pacific getting arrested at a public demonstration where they washed the feet of Central American migrants on Good Friday. There is a place for each of you in the array of ways to show hospitality, and I hope that each of you find a place where your gifts fit and use these resources to invite others to do the same.
So we don't know the exact numbers of those who leave their homes behind. It's very difficult to track this. We don't know how many leave their homes fleeing violence and poverty, and we don't know the exact numbers of those who make it. We don't know the exact numbers of those who die horrible deaths on their journey. We don't know the exact numbers of those who give up and return home or are deported from Mexico back to their home country. But we do have really solid estimates, and from numbers gathered by governmental agencies and non-governmental agencies, the vast majority of those who seek asylum in our country under international refugee laws do not find it. So once again, if you were one of those who received asylum, I would invite you to stand again. And I'm going to ask you to remain standing for this portion. Those who make it never forget those they journeyed with. They carry them with them in their hearts. And so if you were one of the ones very in the beginning of our journey who were kidnapped and then deported, would you also please stand, joining your traveling companion again? Kay. That was Kay, yes. If you were one of those who died in the desert, would you please stand? And that would be just the single D. If you were one of those who were detained and deported with the double Ds, would you please rejoin this journey by standing? And finally, if you were one of those who feared the harshness of our immigration courts and entered into the United States in another way and have a question mark on your card, would you please join us by standing?
Oh, is it a U? U for undocumented, possibly?
Oh, it was you, maybe you for undocumented. Those who have U's on, thank you. We now all stand together. No one is forgotten by those who loved them, by those who journeyed with them, and no one is ever forgotten by the Creator. So I invite you to join hands with those you have journeyed with in these past 90 or so minutes. And we pray that may our eyes be open to the suffering that we have been made aware of in this time. May our ears be open to the stories of those who are running for their lives, leaving behind death and suffering in search of a place of welcome. May our hearts be opened that we might indeed be created into people of boundless hospitality that is deeper than any ocean and wider than any desert. Let us join together now in our closing liturgy, our litany. We are migrants on a journey of faith. Our souls are blistered and calloused.
From life's rocky path.
Like our ancestor Abraham, we are strangers in a strange land. So let us journey with those who walk, their souls blistered and calloused. Let us journey with those who walk,
for we are all limping
towards a world of justice and compassion.
Let us journey with those who walk.
And God will surely walk with us.
Come, the road is long.
But we shall strengthen each other. And God will guide us home. Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. Thank you.
Thank you.